The Rambler Network.
Welcome to the Pacific Coast, where the vast and serene holds more secrets than you could ever imagine. From ghost ships adrift in the fog to unsolved disappearances, we explore the mysteries that lurk along the shore. Join us as we unravel the enigmas that are oddly Pacific. The forest has plenty of secrets. If you stand still long enough among the pines, you'll hear stories on the wind. Some old and forgotten, and some that were never meant to be found at all. But every once in a while, something emerges from the stillness. Something terrible that was never supposed to stay buried. This is the story of the Cowden family, a peaceful camping trip in the woods of Oregon that became one of the Pacific Northwest's most perplexing disappearances. A mystery that would unfold in layers, slowly and methodically. The Cowdens weren't strangers to the forest. Richard Cowden was 28 years old, a hard-working truck driver from White City, Oregon. His wife, Belinda, was 22. They had 2 children, David, 5 years old, and Melissa, just 5 months old. They also had a basset hound named Droopy. When the long Labor Day weekend rolled around in 1974, they did what they always did. They drove out to a familiar place near Carberry Creek, a peaceful, heavily wooded campground just outside of Copper, Oregon. No, this wasn't some risky wilderness expedition. This was tradition. The Cowdens had camped there many times before. They knew the area well. Belinda's parents even lived nearby. This was meant to be a gentle getaway, quiet time for the young family in a quiet place where the trees swallowed sound and the stars stretched on forever. On September 1st, 1974, which was a Sunday, Richard and his son David was seen around 9 a.m. at the Copper General Store buying milk. Witnesses said they seemed normal and calm. There was nothing strange about them. Later that day, Belinda's parents were expecting the family to come over for dinner. When they didn't show, her mother drove up to the campsite, and something felt off immediately. The Cowdens' truck was parked exactly where it should have been. The keys were on the picnic table. The carton of milk was sitting on the table, half full. A diaper bag and Belinda's purse were inside the truck. Richard's expensive watch and wallet were inside as well. Even their swimsuits were still hanging on a clothesline. But the Cowdens? Gone. No sign of a struggle, no cries for help, no trails, no tracks, nothing, just silence. The Oregon State Police were called. However, they delayed for about a day due to the lack of indication that anything violent happened. The day after the disappearance, Droopy, the family's basset hound, showed up at the general store, scratching at the door. For days, the area was combed by volunteers, helicopters, scent dogs, search teams. Every possible trail was explored. The surrounding hills were canvassed. Creeks were searched, mine shafts, even animal dens were searched. But not a single clue turned up. As weeks turned into months, the case slowly faded from public attention. People began to wonder, had they wandered too far and gotten lost? Had an animal attacked them? Or had they chosen to disappear? But those close to the family didn't believe that for a second. This wasn't a couple looking to start over. There were no signs of tension or money issues, nothing suspicious in their past, and if it were a bear attack or some other natural accident, where were the bodies? The Cowden family simply vanished. And for nearly 8 months, that was the end of the story. April 12th, 1975. 2 gold prospectors combing the area several miles from the Cowdens' campground for gold in the thick underbrush of the mountains stumbled across something out of place, a skeleton tied to a tree. The 2 ran and called the police. Near the tree was a cave that had more remains. Dental records confirmed that the skeleton tied to the tree was Richard Cowden, while the 3 sets of remains in the cave belonged to Belinda, David, and baby Melissa. Belinda and David had been shot in the head, while Melissa had been beaten to death. It was unclear Richard's cause of death, but seeing as he was tied to a tree, it speculated that he was tied to the tree alive and left to die of exposure. To make this story more haunting, the area and cave had been searched during the mass search when the family went missing, leading investigators to suspect that they had been kept alive for some time before being killed. The missing persons case had just become a homicide investigation. And now the real horror begins. This wasn't a robbery. Nothing had been taken. It was something darker, and whoever had done it had covered their tracks well. But eventually, a name did surface. Dwayne Lee Little, a convicted rapist and murderer who had been out on parole at the time of the Cowdens' disappearance. He'd been in the area that weekend. He had a history of violence, and the type of brutality found in this case matched his previous crimes. Even his own mother told investigators she thought he might be involved. But without hard evidence, the case remained cold. Despite the overwhelming suspicion surrounding Little, no one has ever been formally charged with the Cowden family murders. To this day, the case remains unsolved. When people tell this story, they often treat it like a ghost story, a vanishing act in the woods, a family swallowed whole by the wilderness. But this wasn't the work of the forest. It was the work of humans. Someone who, for reasons we may never fully understand, destroyed a young family in the most brutal way imaginable, and almost got away with it. Almost. Because the forest does keep its secrets, especially when they are oddly specific. If you have any theories or thoughts on this or any other story I cover, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out on social media at Rambler Network on Instagram and X, or visit ramblernetwork.com. Intro and outro music is Oceanus by Flat Sound Works from pixabay.com.
The Rambler Network.